In the early hours of the 25th of July, 1988, a house in West Hills, Los Angeles, was consumed by flames. When firefighters arrived at the scene, they found a scene of horror, the bodies of a woman and a child, both with gunshot wounds to the head. Inside the garage also lay the body of a man who had taken his own life with a gunshot. That man was Judith Barsi, who had just murdered his wife Maria and his 10-year-old daughter, Judith Barsi, a rising child star. In Hollywood, whose voice had enchanted millions of children as Ducky in The Land Before Time and Anne-Marie in All Dogs Go to Heaven. The neighbors were in shock. Some reported having heard gunshots days before, but no one had called the police. A neighbor finally alerted authorities after noticing the flames spreading through the residence. When investigators entered the charred house, they found the bodies of Maria and Judith, both with a single gunshot to the head, soaked in gasoline. Authorities concluded that Josef had meticulously planned the crime, purchasing gasoline in advance and storing it in containers in the house, the same ones he had previously shown to Maria, as a form of intimidation. Before continuing, if you're not yet subscribed to the channel, click the subscription button now. Your support helps us bring important stories like this one and alert people to signs of abusive relationships. Activate the bell to receive notifications. Each subscription helps give voice to victims of violence. The story of Judith Barsi begins with hope. Born on the 6th of June, 1978 in Los Angeles, California, Judith was the daughter of Josef and Maria Barsi, two Hungarian immigrants who fled separately to the United States after the Hungarian Revolution of 1956. Maria Virovac came from a rural university town in southern Hungary, where she enjoyed a relatively comfortable life. Josef, on the other hand, grew up in an industrial area, facing a childhood marked by poverty and paternal abandonment. Maria had always dreamed of being an actress, but felt that dream was left behind when she met Josef in a California restaurant frequented by immigrants. Known as Arizona Joe, Josef impressed Maria with his apparent prosperity, always paying for his drinks with $100 bills. The two married in 1977, and Judith was born the following year. What Maria didn't know was that Josef was hiding a dark past. Before arriving in Los Angeles, he had lived in France and New York, where he had another marriage that ended due to his violent behavior and alcoholism. His first wife, Clara, left him taking their two children, after suffering death threats and physical abuse. When Clara finally decided to leave him, Josef followed her to Arizona and, realizing he couldn't persuade her to return, struck her in the face with an iron pan. It was after this episode that he decided to move to Los Angeles and start over. From the beginning, Josef wanted Maria to be a traditional wife. In the early years of marriage, they seemed genuinely happy. In 1983, he began drinking heavily and missing work, which led to his dismissal. Even so, he refused to allow Maria to work outside the home, forcing the family to temporarily depend on social programs. When Judith was 5 years old, her life changed unexpectedly. While playing at a skating rink, she was discovered by a casting director impressed with her appearance. Despite being 5 years old, she looked only 3, making her ideal for roles of younger children. This moment would transform the family's financial situation and, tragically, trigger Josef's destructive insecurity. Maria, seeing an opportunity to realize her own dreams through her daughter, began training Judith in posture, acting, and diction. Soon, the little star got an agent, Ruth Hansen, who specialized in child actors. It was the beginning of a meteoric career. In no time, Judith starred in more than 70 commercials for brands such as McDonald's, Lay's, and Campbell's Soup. Her first television role was in Fatal Vision, ironically playing a child murdered by her father. She also appeared in popular series like Twilight Zone, Punky Brewster, Cagney Lacey, and Growing Pains. What made Judith special on set wasn't just her natural talent, but her impressive professionalism for someone so young. Directors and producers adored her because she was reliable, understanding, and extremely dedicated. In cinema, Judith acted in Jaws: The Revenge, but her most memorable roles were in voice acting. She gave voice to the adorable Ducky in The Land, Before Time, with her famous "Yep, yep, yep," and to the orphan Anne-Marie in All Dogs Go to Heaven. Director Don Bluth praised her as absolutely amazing, impressed with her ability to understand complex directions. At 7 years old, Judith was already earning more than $100,000 annually. This success allowed the family to buy a 3-bedroom house in West Hills, Los Angeles, leaving the small apartment where they previously lived. While Judith's career was flourishing, something dark began to manifest at home. Joseph, who already had a history of aggression, began drinking heavily. His daughter's success, instead of being a source of pride, awakened in him a deep resentment. He couldn't stand the fact that his 8-year-old daughter earned much more money and received more recognition than he ever would. Joseph carried deep shame about his Hungarian origins and accent, reacting with hostility when someone asked about his origin. Additionally, he fabricated grandiose stories about himself, telling friends he had lost sight in one eye during a bar fight and that he had even served time in prison for killing a man. In reality, his only criminal record consisted of 3 arrests for drunk driving. Neighbors report that Joseph saw his daughter as a possession, not as a person. A disturbing incident occurred when Maria bought a special toy for Judith. Joseph picked up the toy, and when Judith, crying, said, "You're going to break it," he responded, "Look at her. She's just a spoiled girl who doesn't want to share her new toy." He then destroyed the toy into pieces before the child's eyes. On another occasion, after missing his daughter's 8th birthday party, preferring to stay home drinking, Joseph openly expressed his resentment. When a friend of Judith's knocked on the door to play, he answered drunk and hurled insults about his daughter before slamming the door in the child's face. Joseph installed a high fence around the property, something unusual in the quiet neighborhood where they lived. He also monitored all communications, opening Maria's mail and controlling who she and Judith could talk to. As Joseph's alcoholism worsened, his threats became more frequent. He openly told friends that one day he would kill his wife or that he would kill himself and Judith, leaving Maria alive to suffer. Because they occurred so often, people around him interpreted these threats as simple exaggerations of a bitter man, not as genuine warnings. In December 1986, Maria reported the threats and physical violence to the police, but as there were no visible signs of abuse, she decided not to file a formal complaint. Joseph continued to threaten Maria and Judith even after supposedly stopping drinking. He went so far as to hide a telegram informing Maria about the death of a close relative in Hungary, fearing she might use the trip as an opportunity to escape with Judith. He kept a meticulous file of all of Judith's professional activities, not out of paternal pride, but to monitor the money she earned. Ironically, while resenting his daughter's success, he was completely dependent on the income she generated. Joseph's behavior became even more sinister. He maintained several mistresses outside of marriage, buying presents for these women and spending significant time with them. At the same time, he refused to leave the house and prevented Maria from leaving. In a particularly terrifying occasion, when Judith and Maria were preparing to travel to the Bahamas to film Jaws: The Revenge, Joseph entered his daughter's room, placed a knife at her throat, and threatened, "If you and your mother don't come back home after filming this movie, he'll cut your throat." For a 9-year-old child, having her own life threatened by her father was a devastating trauma, with psychological consequences that would soon begin to manifest. During the stay in the Bahamas, Maria confessed to other women from the film crew about the abuse and her fear of returning home. Initially, they encouraged her not to return and to start a new life with Judith, but Maria oscillated daily between fleeing or returning. Over time, the women began to doubt the severity of the situation, comparing it to the fable of the boy who cried wolf. During this period, away from Joseph's oppressive control, Judith experienced a rare moment of freedom and joy. She played, carefree on the private beach reserved for the cast, building sandcastles and swimming in the sea, Normal activities for a child that, unfortunately, were rare in her controlled life. Toys possibly imitating her father's destructive behavior or as a way to assume some control in a world where she felt powerless. At school, although she maintained a facade of normality, her drawings began to show disturbing themes, even though her teachers did not notice the warning signs. During an audition for All Dogs Go to Heaven, Judith had an emotional breakdown that alarmed her agent, Ruth Hansen. In the middle of the audition, without any apparent provocation, she began crying uncontrollably, unable to articulate words or explain what she was feeling. This episode was particularly alarming because, until then, Judith had demonstrated exceptional professionalism during auditions and filming. Hansen, who had worked with many child actors over the years, immediately recognized that something was deeply wrong. Hansen took Judith to a child psychologist who identified serious signs of physical and emotional abuse, reporting her findings to Child Protective Services. During the session, Judith managed to express part of the horror she lived at home, describing the episodes of violence from her father and his constant threats. The investigation was filed after Maria informed the social worker that she planned to initiate divorce proceedings against Joseph and that she and Judith would move to an apartment in Panorama City, which she had recently rented as a refuge. The social worker responsible for the case had 67 other cases under his responsibility, making adequate follow-up practically impossible. Maria had quietly begun transferring her belongings to this apartment, telling Joseph she was helping a friend move. On one occasion, Joseph followed her to the apartment, but she managed to convince him that the place belonged to friends. Although Maria's friends encouraged her to follow through with the escape plan, she hesitated, fearing the loss of the house and family property. This is a common situation in abusive relationships. The victim fears the financial and social consequences of leaving, even when her life is in danger. In Maria's specific case, there was also the fear of how a tumultuous divorce might affect Judith's career. Paradox. The tragic outcome occurred between the 25th and 26th of July, 1988. It is believed that, realizing Maria was planning to leave him, Joseph entered Judith's room and killed her with a shot to the head while she slept. He then shot Maria when she ran down the hallway toward her daughter's room, alerted by the noise. After the double homicide, Joseph soaked the bodies and the house with gasoline, set fire to it, and committed suicide with a gunshot in the garage. In the weeks preceding the crime, Joseph had left clear signs of his intentions. He had begun drinking heavily again, and neighbors reported seeing him transporting gasoline containers into the house. He had made specific threats to friends, detailing how he intended to kill his family. Maria's attempt to escape ended up being the trigger for the final violence. Joseph discovered receipts from the apartment while rummaging through his wife's purse. Confronted, Maria admitted she was planning to leave him, but tried to calm him by saying they could discuss the terms of separation amicably. The bodies were discovered by police officers who responded to a neighbor's call reporting the fire. The community was shocked, especially those who knew the family and had heard Joseph's threats. The police investigation revealed disturbing details. Joseph had meticulously planned the crime, buying the weapon weeks before and stockpiling the gasoline used in the fire. Letters found in his office suggested he had contemplated murder-suicide for months. The Hollywood community reacted with deep sadness. The studios where Judith had worked organized memorials, and her castmates expressed their shock and grief. Don Bluth, director of The Land Before Time and All Dogs Go to Heaven, was particularly shaken, having witnessed the extraordinary talent of the young actress. In a sad irony, the two films that would immortalize Judith's voice were released posthumously in 1988 and 1989. Don Bluth had been so impressed with Judith's talent that he planned to invite her for future projects. Judith's performance as Ducky in The Land Before Time was so captivating that Sullivan Bluth Studios immediately hired her for the role of Anne Marie in All Dogs Go to Heaven. Her character Ducky, with the catchphrase "Yep, yep, yep," became one of the most beloved in children's animation. Judith stated in an interview that of all her roles, Ducky was her favorite. In tribute, the producers of The Land Before Time dedicated the film to her memory, including the message, "In memory of Judith." Barsi in the end credits. The theme song of All Dogs Go to Heaven, Love Survives, was also dedicated to her. For years, the graves of Judith and Maria remained without headstones. In June 2004, 16 years after their deaths, a fund was created to obtain headstones for their graves. Judith's was placed on the 23rd of August 2004, with the inscription, "Our Concrete Angel," a reference to a song about child abuse, along with the characteristic phrase of her character, Ducky Yep. Yep, yep. Mariah's headstone, placed on the 28th of January 2005, bore the inscription, "The Wind Beneath Judith's Wings." The initiative to fund the headstones came primarily from fans of her films, who organized online to raise funds. The surplus was used to donate toys to hospitalized children. Judith's toys that survived the fire were later donated to charities, including her beloved Cabbage Patch dolls and Care Bears. The tragedy of Judith Barsi highlights the terrible reality of domestic abuse and how it can escalate to fatal consequences. Despite the warning signs, reports to authorities, and support offered by friends and neighbors, the system failed to protect a talented child and her mother. 3 decades later, the story continues to serve as a painful reminder of the consequences of domestic violence. The case exemplifies several classic patterns of abusive relationships: the gradual isolation of the victims, financial and emotional control, increasing threats, and the final escalation to lethal violence when the aggressor perceives he is losing control. The house where the tragedy occurred remained empty for several years, considered by many as a haunted place. Eventually, the property was sold and renovated, but in the neighborhood, it is still known as Judith's house. Perhaps the most powerful tribute is simply to remember Judith not only as a victim of violence, but as the talented artist and extraordinary child that she was. In her 10 brief years of life, she created an artistic legacy that continues to touch hearts. Her animated voice, full of expression and genuine emotion, gave life to unforgettable characters that inspire courage, friendship, and hope values that she herself exemplified in her short and challenging existence. The life of Judith Eva Barsi was cut short far too early, but her impact endures. Through her art, she continues to speak to new generations, her voice echoing beyond the silence imposed by tragedy. If you've made it this far, thank you very much for watching this difficult but necessary video. Please don't forget to leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Each subscription helps us continue to tell important stories like this one. If you or someone you know is in an abusive situation, remember there are resources available and people ready to help. Don't hesitate to seek help. Until the next video, gave life to unforgettable characters that encourage courage, friendship, and hope, values that she herself exemplified in her short and challenging existence. The life of Judith Eva Barsi was cut short far too early, but her impact endures. Through her art, she continues to speak to new generations, her voice echoing beyond the silence imposed by tragedy. In every child who smiles hearing Ducky say, "Yep, yep, yep," in every lesson learned about the warning signs of abuse, in every change in laws and practices to protect vulnerable children in these moments, Judith still lives, her spirit transcending the terrible end that her physical life had. If you've made it this far, thank you very much for watching this difficult but necessary video. Please don't forget to leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Each subscription and interaction helps us continue to tell important stories like this one, keeping Judith Barsi's memory alive and warning about the dangers of domestic abuse. If you or someone you know is in an abusive situation, remember there are resources available and people ready to help. Don't hesitate to seek help. Until the next video.